Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the reading that I've assigned for this week, the Stokes and Warshaw article called Renewable Energy Policy Design and Framing Influence Public Support in the United States. This was published in Nature Energy in 2017. And before I talk about the reading, though, we have to know what's a renewable portfolio standard. So in the previous videos, we sort of explored how the federal government can have policies in place or not to promote the adoption of renewable sources of energy. The states can do the same thing. In the United States, the state governments usually what they do, they pass these things called renewable portfolio standards, which determine the percentage of energy that must come from renewable sources of energy. So according to the EIA, renewable portfolio standards are policies designed to increase the use of renewable energy sources for electricity generation. These policies require or encourage electricity suppliers to provide their customers with a stated minimum share of electricity from eligible renewable resources. Notice that I underlined require or encourage because in some cases, the states can mandate utilities to have a certain percentage of energy produced from renewable energy sources. In some other cases, there's only an encouragement to adopt those energy sources, but not really a mandate. In the map to the right, you can see which states in the United States have renewable portfolio standards in blue, and also which have renewable portfolio goals. So the goals are plans in which the states are encouraging the utilities to move to the adoption of renewable sources of energy, but they're not mandating it. In blue, you have the states that actually mandate a certain percentage of energy production coming from renewable sources of energy. Okay, so now that we know what a renewable portfolio standard is, let's get to the reading itself. So what you have here is figure 1 in the article, and basically what you have is on the bottom of the figure a scale that goes from 0 to 100 with the percentage of public in a state that supports a renewable portfolio standard. And what you can see in the figure is that a majority of states, in a large majority of states actually, most of the people tend to support renewable portfolio standards, tend to support the idea that it's important to transition to cleaner forms of energy production. The main finding from this data is that, again, a majority of the public supports renewable energy requirements in the vast majority of states. And this leads them to conclude that in a large majority of states, there are RPS policies in place that are congruent with the views of a majority of their citizens. What does this mean? We're good, right? Well, not so fast. There's a section in the paper called Effect of Policy Design and Framing on Public Support. And what they are trying to do here is figure out in which ways people get to support a bill that transitions to renewable sources of energy. So what they do is a little survey experiment. They have 2,500 respondents that receive made-up information about a hypothetical renewable energy bill. So what the authors are doing, they're basically tweaking that hypothetical bill, telling people that this bill has this characteristic or that characteristic, and then after they do that, they try to get their opinions about how good the bill is. So they use a scale that goes from 1 to 4, where 1 means that the respondents strongly oppose that hypothetical bill, to 4, which means that they strongly support that hypothetical bill. Okay, so let's check out some of the most interesting results that they show in the paper. The first one is that a $2 increase in utility bills per month decreases respondents' support for an RPS by about 0.18 on a 4-point scale, and you can see that in the panel A of figure 2. So let me highlight that for you. That's this effect right here. And also a shift of 6% of respondents from supporting the bill to opposing it, which is right here. Moving on, a larger $10 increase in residential utility bills decreases support by 0.36 in the scale that goes from 1 to 4, and you see that here. and a shifting of 13% of respondents from support to opposition, which you see here. So basically what this means is that changing or increasing a utility bill even in small amounts, $2 a month, $10 a month, moves people to really withdraw support from a renewable portfolio standard very quickly, right? Assuming a constant effect across states in response to the $10 cost prime, this change in support levels could cause 33 states to flip from a majority support for an RPS to a majority in opposition. So again, this is really a neat finding. It means that citizens are very sensitive to cost frames, right? You raise the price of a bill a little bit and people just freak out, and all of a sudden they don't want to support renewable sources anymore, right? Okay, more results. Public support would drop significantly if an RPS did not create any jobs, and you see that right here, right? There's a decrease in support. This could cause 5 states to flip from a majority supporting an RPS to a majority in opposition to an RPS, and this is referring to those states that you saw in figure 1, where they're all ranked in terms of the public support for an RPS in each one of these states. Another finding is that support for an RPS would increase substantially if it led to a large increase in jobs, and that makes sense. Now, you might think, well, is this really a very big impact or not? It's only 0.12 points on a 4-point scale, or 7% on the dichotomous scale here on the right. So the effect is not huge, but it's statistically significant, so it matters. If citizens understood an RPS bill would reduce harmful air pollution, it would increase public support by the same amount, about 0.13 on a 4-point scale, or about 6.7% on a dichotomous scale, and this is this finding down here. So emphasizing either job creation or air quality benefits could cause most states where a majority opposes these types of RPS bills and where RPS policies largely do not exist to flip to a majority of people in support of those bills. And then there are other framing effects that the authors of the paper deal with, and you have those in panel C and D of figure 2. And what they find is that framing the bills as contributing to a climate solution, framing climate change as unimportant, or providing both views simultaneously all appear not to shift support. So those are all these effects right here. As you can see, the confidence intervals in each one of these little things straddle this line here in the middle. And that means that there's no significant effects either in support or in opposition to the bill when you frame it in terms of climate change. So you can talk to people until you're blue in the face about the importance of climate change. Will this bill really address climate change or not? And you see that there's no effect. So people don't seem to worry that much about climate change in this particular case. Informing respondents that a majority of Democratic state legislatures supported the bill, though this led to an increase in public support, but again, not that big of a change. And then when Republican state legislators, in theory, support this bill, this hypothetical bill, then public support increases by 0.14 on a 4-point scale. And this would shift about 5.5% of respondents from opposing the bill to supporting it, which you see in this panel to the right? So these are the effects that they're talking about. And finally, after actually dealing with the framing, they get to try to discern whether Democrats and Republicans that answer this survey are substantively different from each other. And they have some interesting results here as well. First of all, they say results are contextual on the partisan affiliation of the respondents. But is partisanship that important? Is it really that important? Well, to some extent it is. Here the key is that Republican leadership is essential. Let me backtrack a little bit and just show you some of these results. So basically, the effect of the increase in cost in the reduction of support goes for both Democrats and Republicans. For Democrats, it's a little bit less than Republicans, but both groups actually, they don't like an increase in bills, even if it's a very minor increase in $2 a month. The same thing with the $10 increase. You can see these changes in the negative, right? People withdraw their support for the bill. And now another way in which you can see that there's a difference between Democrats and Republicans is that for Republicans, but not for Democrats, in this case for Republicans right here, the reduction of harmful air pollution seems to be a key to support these RPFs. The other thing that is interesting is that obviously among Democrats, when you tell a Democrat that most Democrats in the legislature support the bill, they will support it too. When you tell Republicans the same thing, that other Republican leaders are supporting the bill, you see that there's a very positive effect. And this effect right here is actually bigger than this effect right here, right? You can see that the dot here gets to 0.25. So it's basically a quarter of a point of increase among Republicans, but among Democrats, that's about half the effect right there. So Republican leadership really matters. When Republicans feel that their leaders in the legislature support these bills, then they're much more likely to support it too, right? Why is this important? Well, because usually we have the tendency to think that politicians do only what their voters want them to do. And what these results show is that politicians can actually be leaders. They can come up with policies, and when they do that, the people that voted for them are more likely to support those policies. Okay, questions you should be able to answer from this mini lecture. What's an RPS? How does the majority of the population in most states feel about renewable energy? What are the variables that lead people to increase their support of renewable portfolio standards? 4. What are the variables that lead people to decrease their support of renewable portfolio standards? And 5. How does partisanship affect support and/or opposition to RPSs? That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one.